Alright, so I just finished shooting the vids for the Patreon this month. Explaining to them, you know, things are going to be a little bit slow at the start of each month. This is the time me and Skidden have to finish setting up for the wedding and start looking for a new place to live. So that's what we have to do. SupernovaRevenge. Somebody said that my heart will not be able to handle it. That's how it was written in the Discord, and I'm excited to see it. I got stressed out last time we shot these. So I do not doubt you guys anymore with it, but let's get into it, man.
Welcome back, everyone.
What's going on?
If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to
my
hit
throat,
that
it's
like
killing
button
me.
and subscribe. Now it's time to go even further than Nuclear Revenge with some r/SupernovaRevenge.
I don't know if I can handle it, man.
My granddad destroys the life of guy who tried to kill my dad.
Well, see, that's not so bad because it was almost murder, right? So that's...
I got to reading these and remembered the epic story of revenge that my granddad got after a guy tried to decapitate my dad. So the thing to note is that my granddad was a brigadier general who took part in the Allied invasion of Italy and was an excellent strategist who had the respect of everyone in town. However, he raised a family of smartasses.
Okay.
So, in 1974, my dad was in high school and lived in a small town in Massachusetts, and, like his older siblings, was a smartass and a bit of a troublemaker. Called in bomb threats to get out of school, sort of thing.
Wow.
Well, one day someone vandalized the house of one of the teachers. We'll call him Mr. P.
Had a man named Dr. P. Don't forget the doctor.
Exactly what happened, but I think it was something along the lines of trashing a garage and throwing paint all over. Mr. P had long hated my family, as my aunts and uncles and dad would mock him because he wasn't a particularly intelligent teacher and his students would often correct him.
Dr. P is a genius, all right, just to set it straight.
For some reason, Mr. P was convinced it was my dad who did it. He would have probably blamed my aunts and uncles too, but they were all in Vietnam at the time. And for whatever reason, he had the genius idea to try to kill my dad in response.
The teacher, bro?
My dad has always been an avid motorcyclist, and at the time, he would frequently give girls rides past Mr. P's house, and he liked to go fast. One night after a school function, a dance I think, my dad was giving a girl a ride home, and her place was 2 or 3 houses down from Mr. P. He dropped her off and was starting to speed off home when he noticed a metal wire strung across the street between 2 poles right at neck height for anyone riding a motorcycle.
What?
It was pretty obvious that this trap was meant for him, and had my dad been speeding down the street like normal, it likely would have decapitated him. Needless to say, my dad was both freaked out and pissed. He rushed home to get my granddad and showed him the wire.
That is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life.
My granddad was normally a calm and collected man who had seen a lot and had military stoicism. But upon seeing the trap laid out to kill his son, my dad said he was more furious than he had ever been in his life. They went to all the houses in the area and got everyone's attention and demanded to know who set the trap. They found out it was Mr. P when someone told my granddad that Mr. P had mentioned something about getting revenge on my dad for vandalizing his house.
Killing him. That would have killed him. He would be dead.
When they confronted Mr. P, he didn't deny it, and my granddad promptly punched him in the face, knocking him out, and they went home.
Okay.
When they got home, my granddad interrogated my dad, demanding to know if he was the actual vandal. He was not. Mr. P was disliked by many of his students, and we never learned who actually did it. With that settled, my granddad said he would destroy Mr. P if it was the last thing he did. That he would end him for having the nerve to try to kill his son. At this point, my granddad started planning his personal war on Mr. P. But I'm not super sure of all the details because he intentionally left my dad out of much of it. So I only have what my dad was involved with and what we found out later.
Okay.
What we know is that my granddad reached out to a number of his contacts who served with him in World War II, told them what happened, and recruited them for Operation Black Paint. Yes, that's what he really called it.
Okay. This is getting out there, but I'm still in it, guys.
First, in the summer of 1974, they broke into his house and sabotaged the plumbing, causing a toilet on the second floor to flood water all over. And the local plumber, who was in on the operation, while fixing the pipe, did something that caused the hot water tank to explode a few days later,
God.
further wrecking Mr. P's house. This apparently happened during a rough time in Mr. P's marriage, and these stresses apparently pushed it over the edge and they got divorced. And while he doesn't have proof, my dad believes this was part of the plan. Later that year, just as school was starting, my granddad had someone remove the lug nuts from Mr. P's car, which predictably caused him to get into an accident.
I was about to say, that would kill somebody. Oh my God.
Mr. P was uninjured, but his car was wrecked. He was still broke from having to do the repairs caused by the plumbing incidents. Without a car, he frequently struggled to get to and from the school, and my dad would laugh at him driving by on his motorcycle while Mr. P walked to work. We also know that my granddad turned him into an alcoholic, leaving bottles of booze on his porch with a note saying things along the lines of, "Heard you were having a rough time. Here, take the pain off."
What?
Throughout the school year, Mr. P was growing increasingly stressed and depressed, and his alcoholism began to show. In about March of 1975, my granddad gave my dad a bottle of scotch and told him to put it in Mr. P's desk at school on the promise my dad would get a bottle of scotch for himself. He did, and that evening the principal got a call saying Mr. P had been seen drinking on the job. Mr. P was fired after they found a half-empty bottle of scotch in his desk. Jobless, careless, recently divorced, depressed and alcoholic, Mr. P decided to try to sell his home and start over somewhere else. My granddad also made this hell, as he had several people look at the house and had them sabotage it further while they were there, such as pouring glue into the kitchen sink and locking up the garbage disposal, salting the yard, and causing various small bits of damage to the property, while complaining at the poor state of the place. Eventually, Mr. P gave up selling it and just walked away with only the clothes on his back.
This story is insane.
My family...
This is just crazy. I don't even understand like all the things that are happening here. What the fuck is going
lost
on?
track of Mr. P for a few years before finding out he was a homeless wretch on the streets of Boston. And
how would you figure that out?
In February of 1978, with a historic snowstorm bearing down on them, my granddad found Mr. P under a bridge where he confronted him, told him that he was the one who had destroyed his life and why. He then poured his soda onto Mr. P, walked away, and proceeded to let him freeze to death that night.
Are you gonna say anything about the ending of that, please? Are you gonna help us to like there are so many places in this story where even if it was true, you should leave out to make it a better story. It just got so fucking deep and into it, man. Sabotage happens, okay? We know sabotage happens. We know people get into like real beefs and shit, but like that is just so much to do. That is...
Holy hell.
You would be insane if you did all that to
moral
somebody.
Of the story, don't try to decapitate the son of a World War II veteran. My God. Like, holy hell.
That's it? That's all you're gonna give us? Alright, let's do one more.
Butterfly effect. The prelude. I was a sweet, nerdy boy when I was a child. I was into
God, that hurt my throat. Holy shit, my throat hurts so bad.
Computers, avionics, and mechanics. I was also slightly on the heavier side, but not so much that it would disqualify me from playing sports with other kids. In my school, I was generally liked by my peers, so I never have been in physical conflict until that summer. When I was 10, my parents sent me to the summer camp for 2 weeks. This was something I was looking forward to for months. As soon as we arrived at the camp, things have gone sideways pretty quickly. And I have a crap load of repressed memories about that period, but I do remember this one guy in particular. Let's call him RingLeader, RL. I tried to resist the bullying and fight back, but he was 2 to 3 years older, and the difference in sheer physical power was overwhelming. He also got several other boys and girls on his side, so it was impossible for me to mount any kind of effective defense. The fact that the camp supervisors, the adults, knew about this and ignored this entirely did not help either.
So far, this shit's on point because fucking bullets are crazy. I need some water in my fucking throat. It's killing me right now. Oh, that's out. Oopsie. Oh my God, my throat feels terrible. I need to make some tea for later on, guys. This might be a short shooting week. This is awful.
Keep in mind this was during the 90s in a post-Soviet country. Cell phones were not a thing back then, so I've had no option to contact my parents about what was going on. My mornings at the camp, and I mean every single morning, would start with RingLeader and several other of his degenerate friends throwing a bedsheet over my head while I was still sleeping and beating me up. They called this the blanket.
That sounds
I never knew
accurate.
exactly who was present as I was busy trying to cover my head and face from the blows. This would repeat in some shape or form several times over the day. Basically every time the supervisors were not present, and sometimes even in the middle of the night. Some nights I would wake up basically covered in spit and snot. While RingLeader was waiting there laughing with his band, they of course restricted me from using a bathroom to clean myself up. And this was a point of immense entertainment and bragging stories for them. In one instance, I remember the RingLeader getting up from his bed during the night, pissing on me while I was asleep, and then waking the whole camp up, telling everyone that I had wet the sheets like a little baby. I was even reprimanded by the supervisors, and the nickname Piss Boy stuck for the whole remainder of the hell camp.
Oh, no. Oh, God. Oh, my God.
The ringleader even tried to coax me to give him a handjob on the occasion in order for him to stop bullying me. Rest assured, he was not successful. I was defeated but not broken. After returning from this camp, I have told my parents about some of the stuff, but kept the most hardcore parts to myself. I was too ashamed.
Right.
My father was an ex-soldier and a senior-ranking intelligence officer investigator at the time, but even he was unable to do much about it within the limits of the law. When my father tried to confront him, the ringleader's father basically told us to screw off and, to add insult to injury, blamed the situation on me for being a little pussy. This was done on the intercom in front of their house. He did not even see us. I don't mean to go into much detail here, but the fact is that this summer effectively ended my childhood and started a chain of events that would end up with me being the way I am now.
Understandable.
The long-term impact. You see, in my late 20s, I have been diagnosed with borderline antisocial personality disorder. Basically, I am a sociopath. Apart from other things, this means that I have very little capacity for empathy or any other emotion for that matter.
Understandable.
I can on occasion get happy, angry, sad, or even scared, but the stimuli for this have to be pretty strong, and I also have to choose to feel something. I, in particular, do have a deep distrust towards authorities, hate incompetence and neglectfulness, and do not shy from physical, psychological, or emotional confrontation if I deem it necessary. This personality adjustment is not entirely a bad thing for me either. I am able to remain entirely composed in high stress or hostile situations and can also read people extremely well, since my bias and emotions rarely play a role in my assessments.
Okay.
This led me to some pretty interesting career choices over the years, since people with my disposition are pretty rare and valuable in different roles. Contrary to popular belief, sociopaths are not entirely malicious. We need a flawlessly.
Okay.
Fast forward 10-ish years. I was working as a security guard in one of the more frequent bars in my city. This was not the kind of security guard that you would imagine guarding a mall or pulling a night shift in an administrative building. We always worked in teams of 2, and instead of badges and uniforms, our standard equipment would consist of civilian clothing, a melee weapon of our choosing, leather gloves, and a concealed firearm, which I fortunately never have had to use. We, of course, were prohibited from drinking in the establishment, generally appear non with the staff or other customers, and even appreciated the extra layer of security, but non-threatening. It me so abusing one of our waitresses. In circumstances like these, we employ a one-strike rule. You got one warning from the staff, and if you did not change your behavior on the spot and permanently, you would be forcibly removed.
All right.
My colleague, who was closer and had a better overview of the situation, slowly approached the guy and asked him to stop insulting the waitress. Although I did not pay attention, I wanted to distance myself from this situation as much as possible, since I knew that if ringleader recognized me, the situation would probably escalate rapidly.
Right.
Suddenly, the ringleader grabbed an empty bottle of beer from the table and hit the colleague over his right elbow, doing some pretty significant damage. He threw the bottle away and ran for it immediately. I quickly checked on my colleague, instructed the staff to call the cops, and then follow the ringleader outside. As soon as I got out, I realized the motherfucker ringleader was completely sober and that he had 2 other friends outside. They did this on purpose and were trying to provoke a street fight all along. I was unsure if he knew who I was or if he was targeting me on purpose, but I was not 10 years old anymore. I took out my baton and proceeded with the engagement. The motherfucker even had the balls to call me a pussy and ask for a one-on-one without the baton. They did not bring any weapons, so as soon as the first one fell to the ground, the ringleader and his remaining friend decided to flee. I was not about to let ringleader get away from this kind of bull. I caught up to him in less than 100 meters. I did actually only use the necessary force to make him comply to my kind request to come back to the front of the bar and let the cops sort it out. As we relatively calmly waited for the police to arrive, I realized he indeed did not know who I was, and I was not about to spoil the fun. They arrived like 3 minutes later and informed me that they were looking for a group of guys provoking fights in this manner over the last month and asked if I wanted to press charges. Of course we did. My colleague, who almost got his elbow shattered, was unable to attend work for several months. His friend that I had put down in front of the bar even tried to press charges against the establishment, but it was quickly dismissed as reasonable self-defense.
That's lucky.
Since there was no lasting damage. I assume my name must have come up during the proceeding, but the ringleader never connected the dots between myself as a 10-year-old boy and my new self.
Congratulations.
The best part? The ringleader was already up for sexual assault charges. And while arresting the ringleader, the kind officers even found drugs on the dumb motherfucker. It was just a small amount of ganja, but you could get served with some serious time just for that back.
Which is sad. We've already cleared that in the last video, that's actually really sad, but it's funny. It's like actually the same thing. The last one was stalking and weed that put him away, and in this one it's the same situation. It's like sexual assault, which is way worse. and then the weed that's gonna make him do the time. But again,
Then, of course, he claims somebody had planted the drugs. Why would anyone do that to him, though? I'll never know. Lots of repressed memories, as I have said. In the end, he was sent to jail for
3 years. Wow.
Did I mention my father was an intelligence officer? I believe I did. Well, my father was already dead by this time, but most of his old friends were not. Some still working with the law enforcement. One was even overseeing the guards in the jail the ringleader was sent to at the time. I've made sure that my father's friend remembered what happened to me in that summer camp. To put this into context, back at the time, our jails were pretty rough. Several of the people working there were still from the old guard, trained but taught by Soviets. This was certainly not a summer camp. Fast forward 5 years. The reckoning. I was now running security at the establishment, but the company grew a little bit. We now owned the entire building, which consisted of several stories. Some of our duties consisted of making sure that the upper stories were empty during the nights, as the building was still technically accessible to the public because the bar was open 24/7.
Okay, I guess I can see that.
During the winter months, we've often had homeless people try to sneak past us and hide within the building, since it could get as low as
Yeah. In a lot of countries too, they just let people do that. You know, you can stay inside, you could squat because it's so cold outside
during the nights. Even if it put our jobs at risk, we've had an unofficial understanding with the security guys. As far as the homeless people were not littering in the place, were not bringing alcohol or raising commotion, and got out before 6 in the morning, we let them sleep.
Why not?
And even wash in some of the unused utility rooms.
Yeah.
We even sneaked some blankets in. We were not animals, and we realized these people had nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
On one such night, I was checking the floors, making sure that nothing nefarious was going on, when suddenly I hear somebody snoring in one of the utility rooms. I knew it was one of the homeless people, but I still needed to check for damage and alcohol.
No.
Upon closer inspection, I found Ringleader sleeping there. He lost a lot of weight from the last time I've seen him, and was in overall bad shape.
God.
Later, I learned that he had had serious mental and emotional problems because of the treatment he got in the prison. Because he was bullied heavily by the inmates, and the guards did absolutely nothing about it. This led to heavy substance abuse once he got released, eventually getting him into serious debt. And not the nice, clean debt towards the bank side, mind you. His parents had to eventually sell the house just to cover it for him.
That is an insane ending to this story, man. That SupernovaRevenge, that is the pinnacle of revenge we all strive for. That shit is crazy, man. As long as y'all stay on the up and up, you don't have to worry about any of this type of shit. These ones are definitely different though, because like it wasn't like a life full of pain, you know, like it wasn't about these people's family. It was about them getting back at their nemesis, which is understandable. Let me guys know what other stories that you have that you want me to check out on SupernovaRevenge in particular. We'll continue with the entitled parent stories. Those are very light and easy for me to consume. I don't know if I can handle these ones. All right, these are really deep. So I'm gonna let y'all select those for me, and I'll holler at you guys later, man. Peace.